Hey everybody, it's me again. Still down here, still doing this. I wanted to do another unscripted video where we just talk about some stuff. I was gonna do videos on all these things and then stuff came up, so let's just get into it. I watched Uncharted. I couldn't help but just kind of make fun of it the whole time we were watching it. It wasn't too great. I'm sure you know the premise of the game Uncharted. If you're watching this and you care about this, you've probably played Uncharted in the first place. The story and the writing is kind of whatever. It's a very first introduction to Uncharted and Nathan Drake type story. The writing is so cliched and so uninteresting that we were calling shots, full plot points, hours before they happened. It's just by the numbers, just awful. Antonio Banderas is probably the best part of the movie, I think, because he's probably just the part that's the funniest. Mark Wahlberg playing Sully just kind of is nothing. He's mildly charming, but he's mostly just being Mark Wahlberg. The kid that played Spider-Man, I can't remember his name. He's just an awful Nathan Drake. He doesn't exude enough charisma. I don't know what is this kid? He's tiny. Like, being tiny doesn't give you a lot of charisma as Nathan Drake. Nathan Drake is like a 6 foot tall brick jaw man with permanent 5 o'clock shadow and perfectly coiffed hair. This man is not Nathan Drake. Though the acting is kind of just serviceable all around. Antonio Banderas, definitely the best part. Cinematography, there's nothing special. All the special effects and everything, all the editing is just terribly bog standard. Some of the effects are actually really, really bad and very obviously green screened. It's extremely boring to look at. You're just not gonna feel like anybody's in any actual danger or feel into the movie at all. A lot of fun little locations. It's Uncharted, so of course the whole point is the locations that Nathan Drake and company go to. We've got some cool sets. They built, like, I'm guessing they built these. They look like they're built. I'm sure they're hollow on the inside, but they built these pirate ships covered in gold. That was a really fun scene. Really fun set to look at. The costumes are just bland people's clothes, and some of them look absolutely ridiculous. The femme fatale African-American lady, I remember her looking absolutely ridiculous in some of the clothes they put her in. I couldn't take it very seriously. The score and soundtrack, the score in general is just Uncharted music, so you pretty much know exactly what you're getting there. Other than that, it was just orchestra, basic action movie stuff. One of the things that I took away, one of my biggest takeaways, is just the amount of times that they referenced other films that were better than the film that I was watching. For instance, they referenced Indiana Jones at a point, like by name. They just said, oh, it's like Indiana Jones. And I was like, why would you do that in your script? You're just making me want to watch Indiana Jones. You can't point to the fact that this isn't Indiana Jones and then elbow nudge me and go, yeah? It's not Indiana Jones, is it? No, movie, it's not. Uncharted gets a 4 out of 10. Bad. New game by developer Miyazaki of Dark Souls fame. He's back at it again with the white vans. He's bringing open world Breath of the Wild type gameplay to Dark Souls with horseback riding and all of the fun stuff. Let's get into it, shall we? The premise of the game is you play the new chosen undead Ashen One thing called a Tarnished, and the world is kind of in a state of chaos as this special thing, magical item, it's very vague. This special thing, the Elden Ring, was broken. When it was broken, the act of pieces of it being up for grabs, just the fact that that was a thing that people could do, was bringing people back from the dead to go get it. And you're just one of those. The controls are basically just Dark Souls. There is some stuff missing from here that I would like to see that I feel like other people haven't brought up. Things like the glider from Breath of the Wild would go a long way here. Horseback riding is pretty good. It controls all right, but you'll fly yourself off of a cliff a couple of times before you get the hang of it. It's just gonna happen. There's nothing anybody can do about it. Visually, it's absolutely breathtaking. It's beautiful. I don't know what to say. It's prettier than Breath of the Wild. It's prettier than Dark Souls 3. It's prettier than almost any game I've ever played. It's not as cinematic, but damn, it's pretty. It's beautiful to look at. The music and sound design is yet again just wonderful. The music is a little bit less bombastic and I would say less interesting than Dark Souls 3's music. I haven't gotten far enough into the game to where I can exactly say like none of the music hits that level, but so far the music's a little bit more tame, but they might have been inspired by Breath of the Wild. That might have been kind of the point. It would, let's use a little bit more of a tame soundtrack so that we can let people hear the environment around them as they run around it. As far as gameplay mechanics, we got a lot of new gameplay mechanics. A lot of new stuff. They've really improved on the model of Dark Souls or Bloodborne or Sekiro. They've really applied a lot of what they've learned out of all of their games, obviously. All of their history has just culminated to this point. And this game, as far as game mechanics and just the way that it plays, is going to do for the rest of video games what Breath of the Wild did when it came out. It's going to do what Dark Souls did when Dark Souls came out. It's just, this is the new standard. They took everything and they threw it into a giant pot and they said, okay, here's Elden Ring. And now, if something's not Elden Ring, I think I'm going to be disappointed. I did run into a couple of bugs and a couple of crashes. The game crashed on me twice. I have a very good computer. It should not have crashed. As far as bugs, not too much. There's some. The biggest thing for me is really the frame rate dropping. You get to some places and you just can't think to yourself that this is going to run at 60 FPS, and then it does. It blows your mind, but then you get somewhere else and then you're like, oh, well, there's no way this is going to run at 30, and then you're right, The story and writing, obviously, in this one was done by George R.R. Martin of Game of Thrones fame. His writing style is all over this boy. I definitely love it. It's very fun to read up on the lore, but they kept the lore a lot more basic. It's a lot more entry level this time around. I feel like I could give Elden Ring to anyone as long as, they're old enough to deal with the dark themes. Honestly, Elden Ring gets a 10 out of 10. It's an absolute masterpiece. I can't say, outside of just things that I would like to see, like that they might even put in DLC or something, I can't think of anything. Just patch it, put some more fun stuff in it. I'd buy it again. I'd buy the whole thing again. Last thing we're going to talk about, The Batman. Robert Pattinson as The Batman. This movie has been a long time coming, I think, for me, as something to kind of stand up to the Dark Knight trilogy. The story of this one is that Batman is more of a mental health patient. He's very depressed. He basically lives in his basement. He basically lives in his basement, and he doesn't ever really leave, and everybody's very worried about him. Of course, he leaves at night, goes out as the Batman, and that's where our story basically begins. He's been doing it for a while, and now they've got the bat signal set up, and it kind of starts there. The writing is really weird. The movie is extremely long. It's 3 hours long. There's no reason for this movie to be 3 hours long. A lot of the stuff is predictable. A lot of the dialogue is really cringy. I can't honestly sit through Catwoman looking at Batman and then saying something about, like, rich white dudes when she's just staring at a guy who's obviously a rich white dude. I don't know. It's just weird. A lot of the decisions, I don't have anything against her being mad at rich white guys, but why did you make her do it to a man who is obviously a rich white guy? They're just standing up on a roof, and she's like, oh, the city is being ruined by all these rich white men. And I'm like, okay, fine, but like this guy across from you, you've seen him and his fancy car. He's got a motorcycle. He was able to afford this suit. He's obviously a very rich man. The acting in this movie is particularly good. It's probably one of its best strengths. The casting is just fantastic. Robert Pattinson plays a very good Batman. Zoe Kravitz is probably the least interesting bit here. She plays Catwoman, and just a very boring Catwoman she is. Paul Dano as the Riddler was just wonderful. He really comes off as the closest thing we've gotten to an absolute psychopath being the bad guy since the Dark Knight trilogy. Colin Farrell as the Penguin is just absolutely breathtaking. I didn't even know until I left the building that was Colin Farrell. And when I found out it was Colin Farrell, I did not believe it and had to look it up. Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon was wonderful. He didn't really have much to do. He just kind of sits around and looks confused for most of the movie. And Andy Serkis, who I also did not believe was Alfred Pennyworth, was definitely Alfred, and I had to look that one up too. He also did a fantastic job. The cinematography is probably one of the movie's strengths. It's not fantastic or anything, but it definitely makes the movie more interesting to look at. They have some good shots. The editing is really where I think most of this movie falls apart. The cinematography, they've got cool sets, they've got cool camera work, but to make some of it work, they obviously had to edit some clips together. There's a very cool scene where Batman walks down a hallway and people are firing machine guns at him, and it's a dark hallway, so it just keeps lighting up with the gunfire. There's a very fantastic shot at the beginning of the film where the film just opens on candid camera footage of somebody stalking a house through their point of view. You can just feel them and hear them breathing. Really creepy, as it's just footage of somebody through some binoculars. That was a really good opening. The sets and costume design are here in full force, just like they always are. The new Batman costume is a lot of fun. The new Batmobile is a lot of fun. They had some stuff that was obviously some sets, but there's not really anything that you can do about that. Catwoman's apartment, obviously a set. Riddler's apartment, obviously a set. But do I really blame them for using a set for these detailed situations? No, not really. I don't think anybody except for me in the theater noticed that it was a set or cared. The score is the score doesn't reach the height of its contemporaries. That's the big problem when it comes to the music. When I think Batman, there's so many songs that immediately rush to my head. None of that was here. As a matter of fact, what we do get is a cover of a Nirvana song. It might have been the actual recording of the Nirvana song. I couldn't tell. It was it's Something in the Way. They use that to pretty good effect. It is moody, it is cool, but honestly, that's not Batman soundtrack material. Who decided that Batman and Nirvana are very alike and should be used? In the end, it's not a bad film. It's not a mediocre film. It's a film that's just fine. The Batman gets a 6 out of 10. I would give it a 7 if it weren't so damn long and if some of the shots just didn't go on forever. Anyways, 6 out of 10 for The Batman, 10 out of 10 for Elden Ring, and a 4 out of 10 for Uncharted. Special thanks to our producers, John Foreman and Anthony Wumbo. I hope you guys don't mind me doing these little roundup videos like this and just kind of speaking my mind. I have had a lot come up and haven't been able to work on stuff. You know I love you. You know I'll see you again. This has been I'll Review Anything, signing out.